Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Tamara Rhone. I call her Tammy, and sometimes Cousin Tammy. And we are here to talk about your family history. You have an amazing history, and your experiences growing up here in Denver.
Actually was born and raised here in Denver. According to Asa Hilliard, he said I had a very rich Kemetic name, ancient Egyptian name. Ta comes from Thoth, the learning god of wisdom. Ma'at came from the goddess of justice, and Ra is the sun god. So he said I had a very rich name, and that, you know, the gods must have deemed that on me. So I was quite proud of that. I like that, especially considering my area that I teach in.
Tell me a little bit more about your siblings and some of their history. I know that you went to St. Mary's and they got to go to East, and I know that's part of probably why you're so happy to be at East.
I am the oldest of 5. We have a blended family. As I mentioned to you before, my father passed away at a young age, and so my mother remarried. And she married a man, Edward Dwight Jr., who she actually grew up with. She went to preschool with him, and he told her in preschool he was going to marry her. Oh. And so, and I have pictures of them when they were little, so cute. But he had 2 children from a previous marriage that my mother helped to raise. So my sister, who was the second in order, is one of his children, Tina. And then my brother, Eddie, who is his second child. And then my brother, you know, with my mom and my dad, was Robert Rhone III. And then they both had one, Curtis Christopher, but we call him Chris. And like I said, they all graduated from East High School. I'm the only one that didn't get to go. And you know, it's hard being the oldest in the experiment. But my entire social life was at East, because I'm in Park Hill. St. Mary's is way out in Inglewood. And I went to all the dances and the basketball games and the football games and sweetheart dance and things like that. And such wonderful memories. You know, those were the days where you had bands and Battle of the Bands, and Manuel had Jabberwocky, and oh, it was just, you know, that was so much fun. That was the highlight. Was, you know, being able to do that. So anyway, I go through high school, and I really wanted to go to Howard University, but we are all so close in age, except for Christopher, that my parents were going to have 4 kids in college at the same time. So they said, you have a choice between CSU, UNC, CU, you know. And I went kicking and screaming. I remember my mother packed me up, dropped me off. You know, the other moms were in there fixing dorm rooms. My mom dropped my stuff on the curb and left me up at CSU. You know, those were tough years just because I didn't want to be up there. And Fort Collins, they say that it's changed, but that was the first time I was actually called the N-word to my face, was up in Fort Collins. And it just, you know, and of course those were the militant times. So, you know, I was marching against the war, and, you know, but that was I don't know, it was kind of difficult to me, but that's when I made the decision, you know, when I found out I couldn't go to law school to go into education for sure. I had done many things growing up. I remember we had modular scheduling at St. Mary's, so I was able to, once I was driving, I would drive down to Wyatt, which is where my mother was teaching, and I tutored a little 2nd grader because he couldn't read, and I taught him how to read, and that had a profound impact on me, and I liked working with the kids. So after I graduated from college, I actually started teaching 2 weeks after I graduated. Okay. And I taught at Loyola, and I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Social studies, which is my area, because I was a poli-sci major in college, and math, which is my worst subject ever. And I think the kids did more teaching than I did in that area. And that was a rough first year, and I remember crying, telling my mother she had wasted her money. And then I needed to find a different career because that wasn't for me. And she said, you know, you're trained for secondary, just hold on. So the second year, that's when I went over to East. And eventually actually got an actual teaching position over there. I took Regis Groff's place. And he helped me so much. There were so many, you know, in those days, they really took you under their wing and took care of you. Yes. And so Evie Dennis, who will become the first black superintendent of Denver Public Schools, had been a family friend forever, looked out for me, took care of me. I had Omar Blair on the board, protected me, made sure that I got that contract, got that job. You know, and then you go and improve from there. But you know, you had to have help to get in and stay at that time. And I had them, and I had Regis, and Pat Gatewood was a co-worker that took me under her wing, Eva Love. I mean, there were so many that just, you know, I really was taught by the best and the brightest, not only within my family, like my Uncle Tommy Rhone, who's my dad's youngest brother, you know, was a teacher and a principal. And then we'll go to Marion Labs and the Kauffman Foundation. But he, you know, they were all such a huge influence. His wife, Aunt Margie, who has quite a story herself. But they all, you know, were influential in that. So I had the best of the best. And then when I was in college and I was really struggling, there was that professor who was my father away from home, and his name was Dr. William Sims. And he meant everything to me at CSU. The days that I wanted to pack my bags and leave Fort Collins and say, forget it, I'm done, I'd go to his office, you know, and probably because I knew he would talk me out of it, but he'd take my suitcase and he would take me home for dinner or take me out, you know, and his wife would cook, or he would take me out to dinner and talk to me about the larger goals, you know. And when I did my first year of teaching and I was struggling, and he called to check on me, and I'm like, I'm struggling here. He drives down from Fort Collins to Denver, takes me to dinner, talks to me, which is why I wanted to be that kind of teacher, because I had the best of the best. And when I did my student teaching, I did my student teaching at Manual. There were two teachers that I worked under. I will mention the name of one because the other one was so awful. All I will tell you about him is that I knew I never wanted to be that kind of teacher. He was the worst of the worst, and he was the walking retired. But Gerald McCracken was the other, and he actually, because I was so impressed with his manner and how he taught, that I requested not to just be the student teacher, but I asked if we could team teach together, because you know how they turn the class over to you? Yes. But I wanted to work beside him so that I could get that from the master, you know what I mean? So he allowed that, and I just knew that was the kind of teacher that I wanted to be. So with all of that I had, I just have, to this day, strive to reach those goals of those people that did so much for me, did so well in the classroom, and influenced me. And I didn't want to be anywhere else but the classroom. I took a little foray outside of the classroom because my master's, I went back to CSU, I was still working, got a master's degree in educational administration. I think because of my mother. Okay. She went back, you know, she got her master's. She has an EDD in curriculum and instruction. Okay. And so, you know, she's this doctor and this administrator, and I'm thinking, yeah, I need to keep walking the path. And so I actually went into what they call a TOSA. It's a pre-administrative TOSA position, and I ran a program, the DEEP program, and I loved the kids. I was at Montbello, and at the time it was Hamilton Hill in place. I loved it. I loved working with the kids.
Miss Rhone understands that age-old tradition is that you love the student first, and then you teach them. And the level of impact that she's had on kids is through the roof, because she always starts with a deep level of love for those kids. And any kid that has ever had Miss Rhone, any student who has ever been inspired by her, feels that love and feels that appreciation, and she trusts them as young adults, and also challenges them constantly to be better people. So she's pretty spectacular, and she's spectacular because she sees the whole kid.
But then you have to deal with all the political minutia. So I'd be doing something really fun with the kids, and fortunately they didn't have cell phones then, but they would call the school and somebody would come get me and say, you're needed back at the office. There's a budget crisis, or you have to do that. And I'm like, you know what? And I loved my boss, Fanny Evans. She was great too. Great, took me under her wing. And I said to her, you know, we got one more time with a budget crisis. You know I don't like to deal with the money. So y'all can handle that. All I want to do is run the program. She's like, that's not how it works. So literally, and I knew like within a month, put me back in the classroom. Yeah. She convinced me. I ended up, and this is how good she was. I was just going to do the semester. She said, that won't look good. You need to do at least a year. So I did the year. Then she was like, well, we've got to transition somebody, so you need to do another semester. I stayed a year and a half. And she was so cute. She called me into her office. She said, I just want to tell you that I want to be honest and tell you that I'm not going to do anything to help you get back in the classroom. You're great at what you do. You need to do this. And I said, I am so appreciative of the compliment, and I just want to be honest with you and tell you that I'm going to go right over your head and pull every marker I can to get back in the classroom. And I did, and I got back into the classroom. I promised them I would never ask for anything again. They put me back at East High School. I worked under Jim Tracy, who was a fantastic principal. And then, of course, I get Pia Smith, Evie's daughter, as a principal, phenomenal principal. Jerry Lee Anderson, phenomenal. I mean, I had all these great people to work under. Shoot, I was in heaven. I mean, it was just great. I had my kids. I got to write the curriculum for African American History Honors. Asa Hilliard helped me with that. You know, I would pick his brain, you know, National Black Child Development Conference, pulling him, I'm writing this curriculum, can you help me? I need a book, can you help me? He just, you know, emailing, he was wonderful. And I wrote the curriculum for the district, for the Honors African American History. They called it African American History X. And so not only did I write it, and I had, you know, Liz Stansberry helped me get it through. I mean, it was great.
Do you have any idea how many young women you helped
to become
Al Club debutantes?
No, I don't know. I would probably say hundreds. In fact, Werda Utsi, one of my coworkers, you know, since I've retired, she actually has taken it over along with Black Student Alliance and many other things. And her father passed away last year, right in the middle of that nomination process. So I stepped right in and took over. But I have no idea. I'm proud to say that my daughter was an Al Deb. I was not, but she was. And she loved every minute of it. But I have no idea. I never thought about that. But yeah, I did it for years.
Well, she's definitely the role model. She's the pillar. She's a teacher that you want to be like. And when I grow up, I'd like to be a Miss Rhone. That's down the road for many teachers. But she definitely has a positive rapport with the students.
I know they've had more than 1,400, 1,500 young women come through, and I was betting that you probably covered about 700 or 800 of those young women.
Oh, I don't know that many,
Yeah,
but that'd be pretty cool. Maybe I should look at pictures and count.
We'll have to go back and
know.
count that and see.
Yeah.
But we get day after day after day, whatever path of some young person I cross, and your name comes up, that you are the best teacher.
But you know what it is? I love what I do. I'm retired, but I still teach. I love what I do. I don't like faculty meetings. I don't like meetings, but I love being in the classroom with the kids. I love watching that epiphany, that light bulb moment. I love when a kid has struggled through but says, I've really learned from this. You know, that's the gift of it each and every day. Listen, you go to work, you don't know what's going to happen. The stuff that, you know, you can imagine, like I'll write these lessons, And we'll have these little group things where they'll role play, and in your head, you have in your mind, you know, what the outcome will be or what they're gonna say, and they'll go totally off in some other direction, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me. I never would have thought about that in a million years. And sometimes it's scary, which is probably why I never taught like kindergarten, because you can mess those kids. I don't want to mess up anybody's kids. I have the big ones, but I love it when, you know, one will come back and say, I'm a teacher, you know, because I loved your class so much I wanted to go into education. That's why I say when they tell me they can't find black teachers, they're a big fat lie. I have so many former students that have gone into education and are doing well. Yes. You know, both in the classroom and administration, they have gone on. So you can't tell me there aren't teachers out there, and they're great.
I wanted to ask you about your history and experience with East High School. It has such a diverse and interesting history in Denver Public Schools, but if you can maybe talk about your experiences there and how you see some of the changes as they occur and what it's like now.
Right.
Talk about that.
Well, what I've found in my long history at East, because almost my entire career was spent there, is it is very much a microcosm of general society. So when I entered into East High School, I was considered what they would probably say one of the affirmative action babies. You know, we were under federal court order. You had a certain percentage of teachers of color, you know, based on the formula that Judge Mage approved through the court. And I was able to get one of those positions. And I had a principal that did not want me there. And so it was a huge political fight where fortunately I prevailed because I have thoroughly enjoyed my career there. But it's not without its negatives. East is a diverse school, and I kind of say that loosely. It is diverse, racially, economically, the whole thing. But what you find at East is you have everything from the haves to the have-nots and in between. A lot of different, what we call racial structures, but ethnic groups. And when I first entered, I had great concerns about the tracking. A black child walking into a counseling office and you look at the color of their skin and assume that they need a remedial class or that they're not an AP student. I see wealthy white children walk in and they're automatically put into AP classes, yet a black parent would have to fight to get their child in. That has pretty much gone away.
Well, first and foremost, the black students have the farthest to go, if you will. They've been denied quality education for so long, and she puts a lot of energy and effort into trying to close the achievement gap.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the leadership through the years. Now it's getting, I worked with an achievement program there on the side where we would pair kids up that should be in accelerated or AP classes and didn't want to take them because to this day, it is uncomfortable for children of color to be in those classes. When they talk about slavery, everybody turns and looks at that one black kid that's in the class or whatever. So it's still uncomfortable, and there's no excuse for that. I mean, to me, it should have changed, and it has not. I do know that right now we have a principal who is working on it in trying to get the kids into AP and X, geography and biology and things like that. But so they're not tracking quite as much, but I still have issues with how kids are put into classrooms. And, the computer doesn't pick every single low kid put in, say, we're to Utzi's classroom and she's a black teacher. Yes. Or why are all the discipline issues in her class? It's not random. They'll say it is, but it's not random. And at some points when I used to get, the toughest kids, you're flattered because that means I know how to handle them. And I know that I can give them the opportunity to realize that acting out is not the way to do it. Your education is more important. So I have that for them, but it's still, especially now, and you know, I'm out of that game, but where this testing is high stakes. Dumbest thing they've ever done is this.
Yes.
Education has gone backwards so far. You're teaching to a test. The kids are not learning how to critically think. Fortunately, the course I teach, they get to do that. But for most of those kids, all day long, they're being taught to test, taught to those tests. They're not learning how to think. And so the common sense is going right out the window. They can't think their way out of a paper bag. We are not educating children. They're teaching children. And that's dangerous because I don't think that it's preparing them for the future. They, you know, I see a lot more cheating. You know, oh yeah, because you want to be at the top of the pack no matter what. You know, things like that. So that's really disheartening. I'm not liking the way education is going. There are some things, if it's not broken, you don't fix it. You know, and back during segregation, Johnny could read. Why can't Johnny read now? Well, first of all, I know with our children, there's a cultural disconnect in this country. And this is the mood of the country. You know, the intolerance levels are just increasing like you can't believe. And so you have these young white teachers that are going into these classrooms, and you've got this 6-foot male who's in the classroom, and he can say something or look at her, and then all of a sudden she feels attacked, and nothing's going on. But I know that because I'm a black mother.
Yes.
You know, I know that because that's my culture. But you're assuming, so now you're sending him down to the advisor's office, or he's getting a ticket from the policeman. Now you're going to that school to prison pipeline. You know, and remember the days where we had fisticuffs and your parents were called, maybe you were sent home for a day or two, but that was the end of it. Now these kids are ending up in court and they're ending up with records. You know, so we're really in a dangerous place, and particularly for children of color. So, and those things, it's no different. We're working on that suspension rate at East. They are actually reducing the number of suspensions for the children of color. They're trying to do some things to put that in place. But they're by no means perfect. And for a while, I mean, we were jumping up and down screaming, this is ridiculous. Really? You're writing a ticket for this kid?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and for a while, I used to work half-time in the dean's office, you know, in my younger years. And, you know, we would get kids, and you knew the teachers that just wrote referrals.
Yes.
You know, and you have to teach the children, you don't act out because you know she's going to send you out of the classroom. But then that teacher needs to be held accountable. You're not paid to send them out of the classroom. Right. You're paid to deal with it. Yeah. So, you know, it's tough. In some ways, they've made strides, but in others, I think we've gone backwards. There's a lot of work to do. Still a lot of work to do. And I'm very afraid for our children. And it's becoming, you know, they always talk about economics with this. That elite black child is going to be educated. Yeah. Whether they're at East, Mullen, St. Mary, they're going to be educated. It's the have-nots that I worry about. And what breaks my heart is, you know, they're like any other population. There are so many of them that are brilliant and have so much to offer. And when you look at those that have come before, do you realize in my teaching career, I have taught a person who was the president of the Colorado Senate, who has worked with President Obama. I have taught a student who is a billionaire, a black male. I have taught a student who manages people in show business like Justin Timberlake. I have taught students in every walk of life, from cooks to, I even taught a race car driver, to I have a kid who's doing life in prison with no possibility of parole for murder. And those don't make me feel very good, you know, but I have run the gamut. And the possibilities are there for every kid, though. You know, and I have seen some that have come out of the worst circumstances who have done so well with a little support and just, you know, like, I know it's tough. And that's the hard part, because you have to tell them, your life may suck at home, but you have no excuses. Where's your homework? You have to get it in. You have to finish this. You have to do well, because this is your ticket out. Yes. And it works. It works. You know, it doesn't help when they're like, oh, that poor little black child. Well, you know, I know he's tired. He was working all night. I'm going to let him sleep. Well, he's not learning anything. No. So, you know, but I love it, and I love what I do, and I love being able to make a difference. And I know that I'm not going to be able to save everybody, but you try every day. And I dress for combat every day for that kid that I have to fight for. I had an assistant principal one time who told me, you need to stop dressing for combat. And I was so mad at her. I said, when you wake up black every morning looking in that mirror, then you can tell me that I can take my fatigues off. But in the meantime, I'll be putting them on every day, fighting for my children.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
This has
you.
been such a joy for me to sit and visit with you today.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate all of the things that you said to share with our audience today.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.